And if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat, type them into the chat. And as we go along, as those things pop up, we'll get those answered. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Capano.
Okay, well, thank you, Phil. Well, again, appreciate you inviting us on to do a little chat and hopefully have some discussion at the end. What we'd like to talk about, since we're so closely related to it, is how is this affecting us from a workforce development perspective? How is it going to affect our workers today, and how is it going to affect the workers / students tomorrow? And I guess one of the great things about being paid to be an educator and a faculty member is that's our job, is to search out and research and look at all the latest things that are being published. It's a little bit of a challenge these days because things are changing so rapidly. As I was saying to Emily, it's not just day by day, but sometimes hour by hour or minute by minute how things are changing. But again, as faculty here at FGCU, I think it is our job to stay up with that and stay with communicate to the community, what we see and how it's happening. Again, some of this are our opinions. That's fine. We can certainly debate that and talk about it. We do have some, since we are educators, we're real good at putting together PowerPoint presentations. So we've got a bunch of slides running in the background, and again, hopefully some useful information that you can take with you. We've got some links to other pages if you want to read a little bit more about it. So with that, let me start off. I'll ask Dr. Mood's also working with me, so he's in control of the PowerPoint, so I'll have him advance to the next slide, if you would, Dr. Mood.
I'm trying to figure it out.
There we go. Thank you. So just a quick introduction. Again, yes, I'm Dr. Craig Capano here at Florida Gulf Coast University. We're in the department, I'm the chair of the Department of Construction Management. We're a department right now of 2 full-time faculty, 2 staff, and our first year of students. And this year we actually had 52 students as freshmen. So we're definitely a growing program, and hopefully will grow large in the future. I've been at this for a while. I've been in higher ed for 25 years, but I cut my teeth in industry for about 20 years with them. And it's been a business and a great career. So a little bit about myself. Dr. Mood, you want to give a little
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Capano. So this is Hashim Wood. I'm assistant professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, Construction Management Department. I'm also a graduate of University of Florida Rinker School of Construction Management. And I have a few years of industry experience and been with the FGCU since last June. That being said, I'm also happy to be here. I think Dr. Capano continues, and I jump in a few slides from now.
Thank you. So we'd like to start off with, if you could advance it to the next one. A little bit about, we came across this, the last handshake, March 1st, 2020. We truly hope that's not the case. I mean, I think as people, we need contact, and a good firm handshake, as we all know in this business, is the way we used to do business. So I'm sure we'll get back to it. It's just a question of when and how, and make sure we do it safely. But hopefully this won't be, as it says here, contemporary art. It'll be something we'll be doing again in the near future. So this all came about, a few weeks back when this was evolving, Dr. Mood and myself wrote an op-ed article about how this potentially will affect the construction industry specifically, how COVID-19 is and will affect it. So that's kind of where some of our thinking came from. This article's available. If anybody's interested, we'd be happy to get it out to you. But it's an opinion article, just as we see it and how things are going. So a number of the things we'll talk about today are based off of this article. So as you all know, the construction industry right now, at least nationally, it's not really united as far as the status of what it is that we can do. Being from Boston, I'm still closely related to people up there physically, and well, not physically, but by relation, but also through work relationships. And they're literally on a lockdown. They've chained up their construction sites. Unless it's absolutely necessary, like a hospital or something like that, work has just stopped. Layoffs happening. People just don't know when they're going to get started. I mean, it's a different world up there. Luckily here in Florida, not so bad. We're deemed as essential. We still see projects going on. We still see it residentially, commercially. Things are still moving. People are still going to work, which is a great thing. Again, in other areas, this just isn't happening. So I think we got to be lucky and blessed that this is where we are right now. And part of that comes from, obviously, association lobbying. It comes from governmental lobbying, going up and talking about how important construction is. This happens to be a letter we came across from Environmental Protection Agency, writing to the governor, just making him aware that, we got to keep these things going and how important it is, especially this here, looking at drinking water and wastewater services. We just can't stop that. So we have to be considered as essential. Some of you may be aware of this map that's put out. It was kind of formulated through AGC, but it gives a good idea of what's happening across the country. What states are kind of shut down with construction as opposed to those that aren't. And if you go and you click on it, it'll actually tell you what projects are either on hold or delayed, what the expected time of that delay will be. So it's a pretty informative graph that's been put together. On a downside, though, I was reading an article, I think it was yesterday or this morning, AGC, again, this is nationally, is looking to, from their membership, that there's about 40% of their members are considering layoffs. So that's not a good position. But again, that's a national thing. Here in Florida, we're not quite there. So I hope we can continue on, and indications are that we are. Some of the changes we've seen, and I'm sure, this isn't news to most of you, but, no more large office meetings, 10 people maximum, keeping separated, limited business meetings, no longer can stack the trades, carpooling is an issue, masks, mandatory temperature taking on some sites I've heard from contractors that they're looking to do. And again, just recently, actually this morning, we heard from ABC that they're calling for a safety stand down on next Thursday, I believe it is, to pretty much inform their workers on what they can and should be doing. So there are a lot of things that are affecting us at the job site and the way that we do business. Less travel. I was hearing that from, I forget who it was, but a VP of one of the larger companies, he used to travel every day, off to different sites in different parts of the state and doing, not now, it's all done digitally and virtually, just a whole new way of doing business. So, so that's a change. Reviewing our supply chains. There was another discussion, I was on a webinar and they were talking about, well, yeah, in the specs it said that this particular marble has to come from Italy. Sorry, that just isn't gonna probably happen right now. So what do we need to do? Do we need to be looking at our specs a little bit closer and try and understand and looking for substitutes and things like that? So we gotta think about those changes. And greater communication. I think we all realize that schedules are impacted. We are planners, we are schedulers, that's inherent to us. And right now, our worlds are shaken. We just don't know. But I think the key is you just got to keep the whole team involved, and particularly the owners, that, there may be some changes coming down the road, and, we got to look at some different things. So those are part of the changes. some of the, the good side of things are there's some companies and some sectors that are doing well. I mean, the healthcare sector, we can argue about, what's going on and whether we should be jumping into what we're doing and some of those things, but it's still doing really well. Infrastructure, I've heard that they've even, because there's less cars on the road and less traffic, now they're not jumping into it and doing the road work and the bridge repairs and things, that aren't, that are impacted by large amounts of traffic. So there's some good things that are coming out of this, well, not coming out of it, good things that are happening. There's some trades that are flourishing. The MEPs are, they're doing fairly well, especially the ones working in healthcare communities. Safety and hygiene services, third-party consultants, those type of people that are looking at safety plans and health and welfare plans that are doing well. And facility management firms, again, some companies are still riding through this all. And some companies are even hiring. I again was on a webinar where they're saying, yeah, we're still hiring. We still have projects that we're doing. We need people to do them. So we're hiring. A little different in their approach, but those things are still going on. So those are some of the changes that we see out there. Again, some good news, if you would, that's coming out of it. Out of that $2.2 trillion package that we're all aware of, 114 billion is targeted to go to transportation, be it roads and bridges and airports and that. We've got a big project here at RSW. I don't know for sure, but I'm hearing that it's going to be impacted, but not tremendously impacted, and it will continue. So again, those are some good things. There's a lot more opportunities in construction. Maybe companies need to rethink a little bit about what niches they're involved with, and maybe shift a little here, shift a little there. So, that there's things that can happen, and I'm surely will happen as we evolve. And there's talk now of another package, over and above that 2.2 trillion. And I think the lobbyists and the people that are looking out for our construction interests, they're saying, yeah, you got to keep this engine moving. I mean, it's such a large part of the economy. We got to keep investing in it. So I'm optimistic that things will be okay over the next few months, anyways, as we get through this. Couple other things. So just to let you know, since we are educators, let you know a little bit about what's happening and what we're seeing. We no longer have classes here on campus, as most schools don't, high schools or any other schools. And it's a bit of a learning curve for faculty. A lot of our faculty have been doing some online work, so that's okay. Some of the students have too, so that's okay. But at the end of the day, our students, they're still just young adults. We got to spend a little bit more time with the emotional stewardness of them and talking them through things and helping them out. I mean, our department specifically was all about deadlines and commitments, because that's what construction is. And we would pound that into their heads that you don't get stuff in late, and you do what you say you're going to do. We're still doing that, but I think we've softened up a bit on how we do that. Where, again, the construction management program here is very much hands-on. We've got a lot of great labs that we've been using. Not anymore. We've had to rethink how we're getting some of the information to the students as far as lab requests and things like that. We've given students the opportunity to not receive grades. They can choose to do a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory opt out of their final grade. There are certain repercussions of that we let the students know, for graduate school or financial aid or things like that. But right now, if they feel that they're unsure, they can opt for that as opposed to a grade. This Friday, we have our College of Engineering is doing their final projects. Again, it used to be done, we bring in jurors and they judge the projects. Can't do that anymore. So we're doing it from afar. We're doing a virtual final project presentation. And The other thing that's really, I think, shocked a lot of people and rocked their worlds, we're not having commencement this year. It's all going to be virtual commencement. And that's a big time. I'm sure all of us who graduated out of programs, that's just a great day to celebrate and do that. We ain't doing that this year. Matter of fact, we're kind of closed down until June 30th of anything happening here on campus. So that's one side of it. And then the other side is, is apprentice training. And talking with some people, that's been rocked also. Some of the fourth year students, they're doing some things virtual to get their way through. But the first, second, and third year apprentices, they're still trying to figure that out. And I think to me, that's a major concern, because if we can't continue to get those skilled trainers trained, I don't know, that's just something we're going to have to deal with, I guess. Again, more specifically here, so we have to deliver all of our classes virtually through August 7th. Good thing is most of our staff have been deemed essential, so we can come in if necessary, although most people are working from home. We don't have any students on campus. I know some of you heard actually on the news this morning, they said 1 or 2 students or 1 student had tested positive, but that's just students that had to stay here in the dorms. They couldn't leave, so there are 1 or 2, but the campus is pretty much a ghost town. Everything's canceled till the 30th, as I said. A couple of good things, at least hearing from the president, all of our on-campus construction is on hold except for our major projects, our 8 new water school building, entrepreneurship building, and the build of our athletic training facility. They'll still be going forward. So that's, I think, good news for us. Personally, and within our department, we were in the process, just about finished with the process of identifying 2 new faculty lines, or 2 new faculty. We've gone through the interview process and a new staff position. That's been frozen. So we're not sure we're going to get those back for next year. So don't know. Those are some things we got to deal with. How's it going to impact student enrollment? I'm hearing from some students and parents that, if this doesn't kind of settle out, we're not sure we want our students coming back in the fall and sitting in a class with 30 other people. We're still trying to figure that out. Will new students come? Will we get these new students? Or will they decide, no, maybe I'll do a 2-year online, get my basic classes done, and then see how things are after that. So talk about planning, we have no idea of how many classes to offer in the fall or what classes those will be. We're making some projections and hopefully get through it. And it's really hurting us because, it's not that we're for profit, but other things that we do here help to fund the faculty lines and everything else, such as athletics and food courts and parking and bookstore, and none of that's happening. So we're kind of ourselves figuring out where we need to go and what we need to do. So, I think we're at a crossroads, at a V almost, if you would. And we were talking a little bit about it earlier, Phil, where do we see things going? And I think we can either see them, taking a dive if we don't get out of this soon and what those repercussions will be. But others are saying we're going to see a tsunami of activities, that it's going to even become, more critical to find workers and people to come in and do what we need to do, because projects will just be, getting on track again, and if not more, more, my lights went off. There we go. You got to do that movement thing. So we'll see where that goes. And, I'm hoping for the one on the right, though, the tsunami of activities. And get to the next slide. Yeah. So we got some new changes and new opportunities coming up. We'll see what those are. Hashim, you want to go to the next one, please?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to continue here and talk about some of the changes and new opportunities that actually might come up for the job sites and construction industry overall. So one of them is actually, we have to review the safety processes that we had in place already on job sites. Are we going to see some healthy worksite certification programs coming out of it? The folks being around here in Florida, early 2000, probably remember when LEED came out. and how new LEED was, and LEED GA, LEED AP was a big thing. Are we going to see another wave of certification and programs in the construction industry? That's to be answered. We already have and implemented health and safety plans on job sites. So that's a good thing. Construction industry is ahead of some other industries, believe it or not, in terms of having plans in place. But are we going to enforce those more and more due to the pandemics and also COVID-19? That's also something that some changes might come out of that. Hygiene plans, that's not something serious or hasn't been historically in construction industry. Hygiene plans wasn't a thing that people really be worried about, but we probably see more of those coming. In the op-ed that Dr. Capano mentioned, we co-authored together. We actually talked about these things in different phases of the industry and how it might actually impact construction work processes. So we had more things over there in the op-ed. Have anyone heard about the WELL building certification? That's a new certification coming out actually a few years ago. And now they have the version 2 of it, if I'm not wrong. Have anyone heard of it? Are these gonna be something new like LEED? Are these gonna impact different types of buildings, or only gonna be for the hospitals, for the restaurants? Are we going to see WELL certification system for buildings, for residentials? That's the thing. Talking about WELL, do we have WELL AP? Are we going to hire WELL AP certified people to our companies? That's also another wave of changes that workforce might see fairly soon. So WELL also another standard that has been around for a few years now, and it might actually come out of this pandemic even stronger. So these things also, these small things are very important that we want to point out today. Are we going to have more also certification regarding the health and hygiene of the people who live in the building and also who build the buildings or not? That's also another good things that will probably come out of this. Another changes also in terms of workforce that we probably see fairly soon, and one of them is the displaced workforce, dispersed teams. So what does that mean? We probably gonna see more virtual teams, virtual workforce. We're gonna see more people working from home, and those are obviously some impacts of the pandemics that we see hopefully coming out of this. This is actually gonna be a really good, in my opinion, a good change and new thing that might happen to construction, because to some degree it might actually address the workforce shortage that we see in construction industry, and mainly in the Florida and bigger states that deal with this workforce shortage. What else might come out of this? Technological changes. There are some good softwares around that if you're in the IT business and IT industry, you probably have heard of them by now. Monday.com, have you seen these advertisements in TV? Slack. If not, check the Slack price today. See how the Slack price not get any impact by these changes in the stock, Dow Jones and also market, basically the stock market. That's another thing. It shows that these softwares are getting more important for different companies. People are thinking about this, going towards that in order to implement new types of collaborative processes or collaboration processes that ease the communication between the virtual team members or the members who are dispersed to some degree. And also other collaborative systems that might come out of the construction business. We also have to adapt to it. It's not only construction business, construction education is also adapting to these changes right now. As I talk to you, I'm gonna record this lecture. I'm gonna send it, or I'm gonna get the recorded lecture from the Lee BIA. I'm gonna send it to my class probably, or if there is any link, and ask my students to look over these lectures, these virtual lectures. That's what I do. That's what we do as a school these days. So our learning processes is already changing. Are our collaboration process going to be changed soon too or not? So these stuff are important. Construction industry is coming out of this with more technology, especially in terms of the collaborative process that we work at. Internships. The way we used to have internships is also going to change. internship opportunities are a very good place to train people, to train the young individual coming out of college. But are we going to add the digital workforce element to it? Are we going to have digital internship? If not, are we going to train our interns to have experience with the digital collaborative or collaboration processes? So that's also other challenges that workforce might see in future fairly soon, that is actually very, very important. It might sound very easy and something that, easy because it deals with intent, but it's actually going to be important in the long term. Work from home drills. We all, have to think about work from home drills now. We had this change that put us to this very rapid change of all of us working from home. But are we going to have drills for it once a year? Do we have fire drills these days? We do. Are we going to have insurance for our fires? We have fire insurance for our fire. If something happens, we have insurance for flooding. We have drills for our fire. But are we going to have drills for work from home situations, right, such as this pandemic, or not? If not, are we going to hurt more from the flood and fire, or more hurt from this pandemic? That's a very good question to think about. We have insurance, in case of a fire or flooding that hurt our business and our job sites. But what about the working from home? How we can cover this pandemic? How we can cover the disadvantages that might come out of working from home situations? That being said, if that's the case, are we going to be prepared for it? Are we going to have drills for it? Are we going to have our employees once a year, one day unannounced, that tell them today is a work from home day? We're going to work from home. We're going to have everything ready and do it from home. This is also important in terms of the workforce to think about. Again, digital delivery, BEAM. There are many companies that caught up with this and also working with BEAM integrated BEAM processes, but there are still companies that they haven't implemented the VDC and also BEAM process into their streamline of their work. They need to catch up. They need to think about it. They need to think more about digital delivery. That's also one part of the changes that we see in terms of the workforce and work processes that come out of this pandemic. We design and rethink. We have hospitals, we have offices, we have classrooms, we have homes. In some of these spaces we work, in some of these spaces we work. Us in construction business, some of these spaces are the places that we build. If it comes to that, do we have to rethink of all this? Do we have to rethink the way that our MEP trade design the hospitals? Have you heard of decontamination zones in hospitals these days in news all over? Are we going to have more of those? Is it easier to design those rooms? Do we need more of those rooms? Do we have to have some of those rooms in houses or in the places that we build for elderly or not? So these are all the questions that come out of this pandemic. We all have to think about it. And also our work process. Are we going to think about high-touch surfaces? What are the high-touch surfaces in the building we build? What are these terms? Are we going to rethink all this? Are we going to be more integrated with the safety and hygiene professionals and have a more streamlined of processes that can meet the demands of these pandemics, so our job size could keep working during the pandemics and we could deliver the houses, the hospitals, the parking lots that are healthy and okay for people to go in and work at? These are also some of the changes that we're seeing coming out of this. We have also the changes in digital delivery of trade training that I think Dr. Kapano is going to talk about this slide.
Yeah, and just a couple more, and we'll wrap it up for questions. But I did want to, mention a little bit about trades training, and I spoke about that earlier. There are some good evolving things that are helping us out. I don't know if any of you are familiar with these, but Labster, obviously, you can go on YouTube and see how to frame a wall and all that. This virtual apprentice net is pretty interesting. And again, these are all hyperlinks you can go and look at next. They'll help create some of the hands-on things that you want to do. And we're all familiar with NCCER. You know, they've partnered with Pearson to do some online delivery of trades, so that's some good things. And just again, you know, this is really the time. I mean, when you slow down or change, you know, that's the time to rethink. You know, how are you going to think about your workforce development, be it professional development or bringing in people or whatever it is. And I think right now is a good time to start thinking about that, in addition to everything else we're thinking about. But again, you know, I mean, I think it's a good place to begin some of those thoughts. So what are a couple of things we're doing here at FGCU? We're just starting some new things. We've launched a new Introduction to Construction Management certificate. It's an online certificate. You'll get a certificate from Florida Gulf Coast. If you have any questions or want to find out anything more about it, please do. It's a 10-week learning about construction management. So that's one thing that we've done as a reach out. Another thing we've done, we're launching a new Master of Science in Engineering with a construction concentration this fall. It's going to be an online / evening delivered master's degree. So people that are wanting to expand their professional development might be a good option for it. And then finally, just a couple notes. Again, focus on workforce development. It's a good time to do it. It's a good time to build those relationships, as we talked about. That's what our business is all about. So we need to continue doing that, although they may be digital. No more handshaking, but we got to keep doing that. And then, as we know, hardship brings out the best of people. And I think we see that on many levels. And we see that with our students and our faculty and what they're doing and trying to keep everybody engaged. And, we'll come back. I mean, the construction industry, that's the great thing about this. And as I said, I've been in it for a few years now. I've seen the ups and the downs. I've been laid off. I've been, found other things for a little while and then come back and done it. We'll do that. We'll get through this. And it's, here's the graph that kind of shows this. Over time, it's an up and down industry, and we'll come out of it again, and hopefully shortly. So with that, I want to thank you once again for inviting us. Hopefully I know we put out a lot of questions, things to think about. But we're opening up now. If any of you have any questions that we can answer, or at least maybe point you in a direction that we've looked at, be happy to do so. So
thank you, Dr. Capano, Dr. Mood, for that presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Please type them in the chat, and we'll get those answered, or we'll try to answer them. While we're waiting to see if we get any questions, next Wednesday, 12 o'clock is our next webinar, and that's going to be with the Lee County Sheriff's Department. Kim Swanson is going to be just talking about job site safety, crime, keeping our jobs safe during this time, because, as people are laid off, and we just want to make sure that we keep our job sites safe in the evening. We don't want to. There's some concern that crime may increase, and we have a great sheriff in the Sheriff's Department, so we just want to. They're going to provide some tips and ideas to help our members. So that's next Wednesday at noon. So, and we are also looking for other ideas of webinars. So if you have ideas, you can email us over at the office. Emily is helping manage this, so you can send it to emily@bia.net, or you can send it to me as philip@bia.net. But we'd love to get your thoughts and ideas on speakers and topics and so forth. And so I think we have a question. We always get excited. This is a question regarding the hygiene plan. Do you see general contractors looking to start this?
I think I'll pass that over to Hashim, and I think it's probably in reference to the well programs. I think. What are you seeing in that?
Sure. I do believe that's going to be a big thing coming out of this, because we have seen this trend in construction industry over the last few years, And I think it's going to make it even stronger because now they're talking of having social distancing going well maybe into 2021 and or 2022. So in those cases, we have to be more careful, and I think this is going to be an interesting thing coming out of this. Aldi being started, I don't see it's already being started because I think we have to wait for it to go, to be over and then see what will happen.
Yeah, I think you will see some changes, and after it seems like after every, whether it's a recession or the 9/11, there's always some changes in society and how we do things and function. So I think we'll see some of those things. Another question: there are some estimates that, speaking of change, many firms may not go back to regular office spaces after getting experience with remote work. Will these spaces be remodeled? I guess repurposed? I assume so, but maybe have y'all looked at that or thought about that at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had that conversation not too long ago about, will we be building office spaces? Will there be a need? And, maybe there's enough office space out there now that if we repurpose and, go in and do some remodeling, then we're good. I think as we had mentioned about home designs, for those designers and residential contractors, I mean, I think that's going to be a big part. I mean, right now we look at how many bedrooms and how many bathrooms. We might be looking at what's the office space capability in that house. So I think we're going to see some changes in that environment, definitely.
Well, it's funny. I was, over the years, you talk to, when I've worked for other companies and things, and or boards, and you mention, oh, somebody wants, work from home. Oh, no, we can't. That this won't work. And so I think now that we've been forced to, I think many companies or owners that have thought, I don't think that works very well. I think you're finding out with the technology and things we have now that, we can pretty much do everything at home that we can at work, minus the social part of the work. So I think maybe that may open the door for more work from home. And then we had, let's see, I'm interested in industrial construction management sector. Is that sector heavily affected during the recessions?
It's a little bit different, at least what we've seen over time. And when you say industrial, you're talking petroleum and those type of heavy industries up in New Orleans areas and obviously around the Gulf Coast, and they're not as affected because we're still going to need refineries, we're still going to need electricity. I mean, so it's not, I don't think that they're affected as much as say the housing or commercial building. But yeah, they're going to have to change some of the ways they do things, as we've said, whether they have to meet the well criteria or whatever that is. They'll be in effect, but I don't see them being, cutting huge amounts of staff and no longer building. No, I don't see it, but I don't know. Hajim, what's your thought? Have you seen anything?
I think you're absolutely right. They might not be impacted a lot as long as they are working with government to some degree. However, I think one thing that they might see is that in the broader perspective, the economy is going down and the oil price is going down, and these ripple effect that we see due to the pandemic, that might actually slow down industrial construction to some degree, especially the one that somehow related to the bigger economy indicators.
And we do have one more question. Could OSHA potentially enforce the new measurements with complemental PPE such as face mask?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they probably would be the ones that would have to demand it. I mean, I think up until this point, it's suggestions, but when we get back to normal, OSHA is going to be the one that really is going to demand what it is that we have to do. It's like wearing hard hats, and it's like our other PPEs that we have to do, and maybe it will be, required some form of a face mask. it'll remain to be seen. But yeah, definitely OSHA is going to have a big part in where we go from here.
Well, just to add to that, I was in a conference call with the National Home Builder Association, the Florida Home Builder Association, and we were just talking about job site safety. And I know some areas, I just sent out an alert, there's some areas where there's a lot of pushback to construction being essential. And some of it, as I said in my alert, some of it is, why are you working and we're not? Some of it is the social distancing and protection of construction workers and the inspectors on site. Now, we seem to be doing a really good job around here, but the question of OSHA, I think what we're trying to do, that stand down that NHB is pushing, and most of that's due to there's some areas where there are some significant problems and pushback to have construction deemed essential. So I say all that because we want to keep OSHA out of it. We do not want them involved. And so the best thing we could do, this is a public service announcement, is keep your job site safe, do social distancing, work with your trades, and most everybody I've talked to, the larger construction companies, everybody's doing a fantastic job. I'm not getting any complaints from the building department, but we just need to be focused on that for the foreseeable future, and we won't have to worry about OSHA coming in and mandating things. So it gets real. We don't like OSHA when they come in and start telling us what to do, especially when we can do it on our own. So it looks like that is the last question. We're going to get out on time. Dr. Mood and Capano, thank you so much. Emily, I see you in there. Thank you for putting these together. And again, email Emily or myself if you have any questions, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday at 12 for the Sheriff's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.